I started working at the child care center full time. But while I was there, I loved it, but I'm like, something's missing. And I couldn't figure out what it was. So personally, I thought it was the pay. I'll just be honest. I'm like, I'm not getting paid enough. That's why I'm not as happy with the situation. So I started actually looking for other jobs. So one day I came home and I started to express to my husband how frustrated I was. And he looked at me and said, why don't you just open your own preschool? And I remember laughing, like, yeah, like it's just that easy. That's what I said to him. And he looked at me like, I don't see why it wouldn't be.
Welcome to the DreamDivers podcast. This is the coaching show that is designed to help people just like you, people who know in their hearts that they were made to do something bigger, more purposeful, and legendary with their lives to impact the world. My name is Ira Davis, the Chief Dream Diver, and I am your dream development coach. What's up, Dream Divers? Today on the podcast, we have my good friend, Nicole Austin. Nicole Austin is the founder of Purest Academy for Kids, Incorporated. Purest Academy was established to provide affordable, high-quality childcare and preschool services to low and moderate income families. With over 11 years of education experience in affluent areas and in those that are not, Nicole has seen it all. God gave her a God-sized dream to create a place for quality early childhood education for children from all walks of life. Nicole lives in Los Angeles, California, with her husband and her 2 daughters. Nicole, welcome to the Dream Divers podcast. How you doing?
Hi, I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm good. Listen, you and I have been friends for like, I don't know, how many years has it been? 2015, something like that?
Yes.
Uh, we met back in the day when I was out there running around with my camera, thinking I was making an impact in the world. And somehow I got connected with Nicole and I wind up filming. For those you know, I run a documentary production company as well. Wound up filming an impact award show or gala that she does for her nonprofit. And we got connected. And somehow I went from filming it to being honored at it and giving one of my first speeches ever at her White Rose Awards, man. So that was pretty dope, pretty amazing. She surprised me. Just blew me away. So today, Nicole, we want to talk to all the Dream Divers today about what you are doing to impact these kids in LA. So first of all, tell us about Purest Academy and the purpose behind it, and a little bit about what you guys have accomplished with this purpose-driven business.
Okay, so basically, Purest Academy, like you said, is a nonprofit preschool. It's dedicated to providing high-quality childcare, but at affordable prices. So we target low and moderate income families, mainly because affordable childcare is just hard to find in general. So I noticed that it was a need because I used to work in different childcare centers in different, areas, that people who can't afford to pay more, their children didn't have as much of the learning resources, right? So that's what made us, push forward to open Purest Academy. And so we're providing those learning tools that they normally would not receive because they can't afford to, quote unquote, afford them. We provide those, but we provide them at affordable costs, right, for all the families. So one of the biggest things that we do that I love, I had a family that they were basically homeless at the time. That's what it was. And the mother was doing the best that she could to find employment, and she just couldn't because, of course, getting into a childcare was becoming difficult, right? So we offered the services to her really kind of free in the beginning, just to help her get out there. I'm like, if you're going to go to school or if you're going to look for a job, whatever it is you need to do, we want to help you. So every year we're working with families that are either trying to get gainfully employed, have just gotten a job, trying to complete school, or they already have a job, but they just can't afford to send their child, somewhere else. We work with those families, and every year we have at least one child that's reading by the time they leave the program. And mind you, these are 4-year-olds that, some are 4, some are just turning 5, and our graduation classes are small. So before you're like, 1, we usually have classes of like 4 kids sometimes to maybe 8 kids. I believe 8 was the biggest number of children that we had before, but every year we have at least, one child that's reading, which means a lot because that's something that's one of our major goals, to prepare. They contact us all the time for their children that have transitioned into kindergarten, telling us that their child is doing amazing, that they had a smooth transition into school and they were able to dive right into the new educational, platform that they're on now. K through 12 can be difficult. So that means a lot to us when we receive those messages saying, oh, my kindergarten teacher wants to know, where did your child go to, daycare or childcare, because they're doing such a great job. They transitioned so well. They're learning. They already had a good foundation and base, so that's what we're all about, preparing them.
Listen, now I've been to Purest Academy before it was open, while it's been open, after it's been open.
Right.
Tell us, how many classes are you running right now at a time? Because I know people hear you say, "Oh, you graduate in a class of 4 or 5 or 8." That's just the graduating class. Like, she has a whole. So tell us about, yeah, how it all works.
Right. So I'm licensed to have 13 infants, and that is from ages 6 weeks old up to age 2 years old. And then I'm licensed for 29 pre-K, and that is 2 to 6. And it really kind of depends on the parent if they want to keep their child all the way until they turn 6 or what the case may be. But we usually have a big bulk of children from 2 to 5 because they are about to transition into kindergarten. But I am allowed to keep them through first grade.
Awesome, awesome. So you have an infant room, you
Yeah.
have the pre-K room,
Yeah.
right?
And we split the pre-K kids up. So
Yeah.
the 2-year-olds have their own little class. Matter of fact, that's my class right now. But
Okay.
the
Okay.
2-year-olds have their own class, and then we do the children 3 and up. They kind of work together, but we do individualized care. So let's say a 2-year-old is a little bit more advanced. We might allow them to kind of go with the older class sometimes just to build on that. It just varies what we're doing, but we like to split the classes up based on where they are
Yeah, no,
academically and where they're learning. Yeah.
now I love it. Now, a few years ago, you asked me to come down, bring my camera and cruise, and film uh, just a snippet of the impact that you guys were making uh, in the city. And I don't think there was a dry eye in the room, um, because we didn't just show the kids, we talked to the parents. Um, and one particular young lady was telling us about how you literally noticed that they were sleeping in their car and that they came in and baby girl didn't have any breakfast or something of that sort, and you allowed them to be a part of quality childcare
Yeah.
that they couldn't afford, um, which allowed the mother to actually go on job interviews,
Yeah.
several, until she got employment.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, the look in this young lady's eyes of gratitude for what you did for her just spoke volumes about who you are and what God has called you to do and why you're doing what you're doing. Can you give us just a piece of that story? You remember who I'm talking about?
Yes, I remember
Yeah.
exactly.
Give us a little bit of that scenario. And after we talk about this, we're going to go back to your backstory, but tell
Mhm.
us about that family and that instance and that impact.
Well, to be honest with you, it's still emotional for me just because in the beginning, she she has such confidence and she carried herself a certain way that I had no idea that they were, in the car, right? So
The mom, right?
exactly, the mom. I had no clue until her first day. She just kind of told me, we slept in the car last night before we came in, but I have everything she needs together. She loved her daughter. And she would make sure she had everything she needed, but sometimes she didn't have all of what she needed. So I could see the drive in her and I could see the frustration in her trying to figure out ways to make it work. But she's like, but I don't have anywhere to send my daughter while I go look for these things. She even wanted to try to enroll back in school. And she's like, but how am I going to do it when she was having trouble getting assistance to pay for childcare. And I was like, you know what? While you're waiting for this process, bring her. You don't have to pay anything right now. Just bring her right now. I mean, she's not hurting anything. Like, just bring her to the school. At some point we started to work on something, as far as some type of payment plan at some point. But starting out, I was just like, just come, bring her and do what it is that you need to do, because you can tell she had the pride, right? To where she didn't really want to ask for it, but she had the drive that she wanted to do it. And I'm like, I want to help, because clearly you need it. So with that situation, that little girl is just awesome. I mean, she's gone on to do great things. I love, following up with, watching, because I still, am friends with her mother via Instagram. I get to see all the little growth and stuff from her. So it's a beautiful thing. But it did touch me, because when she shared the story, of course, I didn't know that how she saw me, if that makes sense. Like, I didn't know she looked at me in that way as somebody that was so helpful to her. I just did it because I'm like, you have to get it done. Like, I know you want to, so if I can help you do it, let's do it. So that's kind of where, where it was. So it gets emotional for me, because when I watch the video, I'm like, that's how she feels. It was very touching, very touching.
Yeah, and sometimes we don't understand how important what God has called us to do is in the lives of the people who He has sent us to create something special in order to be a miracle for them, right?
Right.
And
Right.
and me directing that particular piece for you guys really solidified that you were in the right place at the right time for the right reasons with the right heart. And if you didn't do what God had told you to do, where would that have left that family? And that was just one story, right?
Exactly.
This
That's
is
just one.
this is the baseline of what you do. That was just one story, right? Yeah. So Nicole, take us back, right? Before Purest Academy, your story is pretty interesting, right? Um, you can't script this, right? You can't script what God has called you to do, but you took a set of extreme circumstances and you turned that into something legendary. Take us all the way back and tell us how this thing started.
Okay, so number one, it's true when they tell you that, how in the Bible it tells you how God knew you before you were even created, like He put you together, knit you in the womb. You were wonderfully made, right? So in the process of that, I know He instilled this in me, because as a child, I wanted to be around kids. Like, as a child, I wanted to play with them, hold them, do all these different things. So to try to make the long story kind of short, medium size, I don't know. I'll just say I started out actually going to school to be a physician's assistant in pediatrics. That's what I started doing. In the process of that, my husband and I, we were about to welcome our daughter, right? So in the process, my mom goes, hey, why don't you work at a school doing substitute teaching instead of working in a clothing store, right? She's like, you're not making enough money. At least do that. The hours are better and it'll be better for you. And I'm like, as I'm doing this process, I go, okay, wait a minute. I thought I wanted to do pediatrics, but this is actually what I want to do. I want to be a teacher. So I went to school. I was going my master's in education as well as a credential for teaching, because I wanted to be a kindergarten teacher. So I went through this whole process, right? Then my husband gets drafted to play for the Redskins. So we're like, oh, yay, we're moving to Virginia. So we move all the way to Virginia because the Redskins, like in that DMV area, DC, Maryland, Virginia, right? So we're living out there. Daughter was old enough to attend an actual daycare center. I literally walked her in and I'm like, I don't want to stay home. So if the kid's not with me, I didn't want to stay home. I'm like, what am I going to do? I specifically asked them, hey, do you guys need people to work here? And they're like, yes, okay, you can work here. This was my first introduction into being around children ages like because I think their youngest was 18 months at this particular school. So that's when I had an opportunity to be around that age group, right? So I'm like, oh no, this right here is where it's at, right? I love this right here. So I'm enjoying and loving every bit of it. And then, of course, it happens. My husband was cut and we were going to move back, down this way. And when we came back down to California, of course, I jumped back into substitute teaching and I tried to work at a preschool, but I learned in California, there's different regulations. So they're like, you have to go back to school. I'm like, wait, I did this in education and I graduated from UCLA and all this stuff. They're like, that's good and everything. But we require you take specific courses for early childhood education. So I said, okay. I was a little bit frustrated because I'm like, I just want to work with the babies, right? So I went back to school. I enrolled. I took just the minimum, right? Because they tell you need to take, I think it's 4 core classes that you have to take. I went to school, did those classes. I started working at the child care center full time. But while I was there, I loved it, but I'm like, something's missing. And I couldn't figure out what it was. So personally, I thought it was the pay. I'll just be honest. I'm like, I'm not getting paid enough. That's why I'm not as happy with the situation. So I started actually looking for other jobs. So as I'm looking for other jobs, it would always be something that just didn't fit. The pay will be great. The hours will be great. Oh, we don't have space for your daughter to attend. I'm like, what? Or all these things are great, but then the tuition, they're like, oh, our tuition is just $1,600 a month. I'm like, so when I calculate what you pay me to what I have to spend, she can't come to the school, so it was either that. So one day I came home and I started to express to my husband how frustrated I was. And he looked at me and said, why don't you just open your own preschool? And I remember laughing, like, yeah, like it's just that easy. That's what I said to him. And he looked at me like, I don't see why it wouldn't be. And now I understand that, how God places you with people, you're supposed to be equally yoked, all those different things. And in that moment, my husband needed to lift me up to where I needed to be. He was reminding me, yes, you can. Why wouldn't you be able to open a preschool? If that's something that you want to do, I'm sure God will provide the way for you to do it. So when I tell you, he 100% decided to dive into this with me. He definitely did that. So in the process, some people just didn't help, just to be honest. I would try to contact different people who already own schools, open schools, and they kind of tried to deter me from doing it. And I don't necessarily think they were doing it to be mean. I think they were just like, oh, sweetie, you sure you want to do that? Why don't you try something else? And that was my process. So, but Terrance, I come home and tell him, they said, he was like, I don't care about none of that type of stuff. If you want to do it, babe, I don't know why you don't think you can do it. What do we need to do? What do you need me to do? So I said, okay, the passion he has, goodness gracious. But the biggest key came when God gave me the vision. And when I say he gave me the vision, he showed me. Like, I will never forget praying at church, trying to figure things out, and seeing multiple cribs with babies in them. And I was like, okay, so I'm supposed to do it. And not only that, but I still kept going on interviews, right? I'm still like, maybe, because I talked to somebody and they said, why don't you just run a daycare as a director so that you can get a little more, experience under your belt, and then you can turn around and you can try to open a daycare after that, because then you'll have the experience. So I go, okay, yeah, maybe I should do that, right? No, that's not what God told you, but here I am trying to do what somebody else told me to do. So I go on an interview, and I remember one specific interview where it felt like the Holy Spirit was just right here, like, I know you're not back in here doing what like, why are you here? What did I tell you to do? So I went back to church. Of course, I'm praying. And he made it clear to me, if you don't do it, you're never going to do it. And I knew that meant I'm tired of playing with you because there is a work that needs to be done. You're the one to do it. But if you refuse, I just have to take it from you. And I believed him. I said, oh, and I remember I went to school. I literally enrolled in 3 programs because I hadn't completed the master's program just yet. I had completed majority of it, but there was a credential portion of it. So I went back, I completed the master's portion. I enrolled in early childhood education to complete all the units. And then I went back for early childhood administration, literally at the same time. And I finished them all, graduated the same year from every one of the programs, and started looking for venues. And as I started looking for spaces, you would have thought we had money, okay? Where I'm like, oh yeah, we could put that over there and do it, but we didn't. We actually had gotten down so low to where I remember checking our bank account, and I think we had like 24 cents in one account and like 76 cents. I'm talking change, not dollars, change. And I'm just like, I felt so deeply that the Lord was going to provide, that he was actually going, right?
Let me get in there real quick. Hold on. We are talking, and I want you guys to hear me. We're talking about a family who was a part of the NFL family, right? Dad was an NFL wide receiver.
Yes.
Mom worked at a very affluent early childhood education center. Daughter went as well. And then there was a transition.
Yes. Yes.
Where I called your push moment, where God pushed you into purpose.
Yes.
Right? Out of your comfort zone, back to that point in time in your life where everything was kind of up in the air and you couldn't figure out why everything was falling apart the way that it was. And God was literally breaking you down to build you back up the way that he wanted you. And your husband was your number one cheerleader.
Yes.
Let me just tell you something. My wife is my number one cheerleader, right? I wouldn't be the man y'all hearing today if it wasn't for my wife. So when you have a spouse that gets it, they understand it, they're willing to sacrifice for it, they understand that this is just not your dream, it's a family dream, and this is what we've been called to do, man, it makes things so much easier.
Yes.
When they understand. Talk to me real quick about the dynamic between you and your husband. You said you spoke on it a little bit, but talk about what this thing would have been like if you didn't have his support.
Right. So because it was such a difficult situation, trying to do these different things, transition into these different areas, because like I said, we didn't have the income. Like we just didn't. Even though we were trying to find a good source of income, it just was not happening. So because to be clear, when we did find a venue, my husband went in there and he laid floors. We painted every wall. Like, if I didn't have the support that I have from him, like, obviously I know that God would have still provided because God is God, but I know that he situated my husband to where he picked me up when I would be at home just crying, because I'm like, why isn't it coming together? Why aren't people believing in what it is that we're doing? Like, it's clear what we say we're doing. Why won't they help? Why won't they'll say these great things, but they're not actually doing the help. He was there. He helped. I just say he laid the foundation for what it is that we needed.
Yeah.
Like, he strengthened me. Yes, he strengthened me. I'm telling you, I'm like, marriage and having a spouse, it's special. It's absolutely special. And it's sanctified.
It's sanctified. I see you now.
I'm just saying it is. It clearly is, because he could have, but honestly, he could have been like, would you stop? Why don't you just go work somewhere?
Yeah.
Like, why are you trying to do this? But instead, he pushed me through it no matter what. Even when we were struggling, we had a daughter and we were trying to figure out how to feed her. Right. And he could have been like, I wish you would knock it off, because he allowed me to quit, to go my job, to go 100% into doing, looking and searching for the child care, because he believed in it that much.
I remember calling you guys early on, and I'd be talking to Terrance on the phone. And I'm like, yo, T, what you doing? Y'all putting in these floors right now. Yo, T, what you doing? Yo, I'm building a playground right now. Yo, T, what you doing? Oh, I got the fire department coming to make sure we up to code. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, what are you doing? But let me tell you something. when you find people who believe in your dream, you better keep them closer than anybody on this planet, because it's very rare for you to find people who will rock with you when you have a dream that's so big that it don't make sense, when you can't afford it, when you don't have the resources, when everybody else says no. Man, I'm telling you, Terrance had me on cloud 10 because he's right. I mean, but think about this from his perspective. Like, yo, I just got released from the NFL, my dream. Now my wife has this other dream. Now where he could be in his feelings, he like, nah. He like, nah, let's go. God's got a plan. Let's go.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. You said a key thing, because usually if you, especially because my husband played football for so long, that defined like who he was in a sense, right? So here it is, this is his dream. And for it to be, cut in the way that it was, and he's trying to figure things out. And then it wasn't easy for him to find work because he was coming straight from the NFL, right? So, oh, you don't have enough experience, or you have too much experience. So he's like, what in the world, like I should be able to do something. So as he found something, multiple things, I should say, he was still supporting what it was that I was doing. And he didn't give me flack about it. He didn't make me feel bad about it or any of those things. Of course, we have regular arguments any couple would have, right? But he would always support me when it mattered. He's like, keep going, and what do I need to do? He was like, I will do everything in here except what I can't do, right? I can't put in toilets. But he'll be on YouTube, like I'm telling you. He was like, oh, what do you need done? Okay, let me look it up real quick. I love it though, because he's still that way. If I need something for the school, oh yeah, we got to get it done. We got to get it done. What do you need? Okay, let's figure it out. And he's the king of looking up how to do stuff. Okay, that's okay. We can't find nobody. Hold on, let me just
right.
Research it, and that's just who he is.
So y'all had sense to your name, and here you and your husband go around LA looking for places to put this God-sized dream.
Yes.
Let's dive back into the story. How does that go?
Okay, so I'm reaching out to different companies, and long story very short, when it comes to this part, a woman contacts me one day, real estate agent. Hey, I was wondering, are you still looking for a preschool? So I looked through my emails, everything. I'm like, who is she? I never contacted her. I even looked for the company she worked for. I never emailed them, any of those things. So I said, okay, Lord, you must have sent her. So let's go for it. And she found this location, the one where we are now. It was a medical clinic, right? So it didn't look anything like a preschool. But when I walked in the doors, God was like, this is it. So I'm in there looking at it. I'm like, oh, and we're going to put this here. And this area could be for this. And this area could be for that. Like, I'm excited about it, what we're going to do. Then it came time to talk to the property owners, right? Because there were other people looking at this same spot. They were ready to pay, deposits and things like that. But of course, I'm thinking, that's okay. Because I got my faith in the bank, perfectly fine. But okay, when it came time for me to talk to the property owner, he was very open, right? And the real estate agent told me, she's like, he's very open. That's a good thing. But he has a business partner. You're going to have to talk to her too. So I'm like, I just made it through talking to him. Now I got to try to, talk to her. And I remember the day I had to talk to her because I was so scared. I had to tell her I don't have any money. And I'm not going to have money until the school opens. Think about how I'm thinking this is going to go, right? I sat in my car and I called my prayer warriors, right? Because I attend a church where we're very close knit. We have, of course, shout out to my church, another alternative, Praise and Prayer Center. I have to put that in there because they were also instrumental in helping myself and my husband in doing this. Of course, our family too, but right now we talking about them because I contacted them and specifically asked the prayer warriors, please pray for me because I am about to walk in here and tell this woman, I don't have anything to give you and I will not have anything to give you. And who knows for how long, ma'am, because we have to get it open and licensed and actually, get kids. So I go into the meeting and I say, I think I'm cute, right? I got my little blazer. I'm like, maybe she'll just be distracted. So I get in there and I'm like, yes, talking very just, all these different, oh yes, we want to do this and we can have this. But I wanted to let you know, we don't have any money and I won't be able to give you any money until the school actually opens and we actually have children coming in for the income. And she was like, oh, that's fine. And it happened so smoothly. I'm just like, huh. So I'm trying to contain my composure because, you have to, I didn't want her to feel like, okay, are you scared? Like, what is this? Because then, she won't really be confident as much in allowing me to do this, right? Obviously. But I did have confidence that the Lord was going to work it out. I'm like, either this is for us or it's not. So if this isn't the place, then she's just going to say no. But if it is, it's going to work out. So sure enough, she did. And she even told me, we're actually going to give you the keys now so that you can go inside and start doing whatever you need to do to the inside of the property. Mind you, she says in a couple months, then we'll have it where that's where the lease will start. But we'll have it in there that says that once you're able to get the income, that's when you actually start paying it. And they dropped the amount of what it costs. Because not only did I come in here saying I don't have money, I also said, and then when I do get money, that rent is too much. Can you lower it? And they did. And mind you, there was somebody who had a lucrative business that was interested in that property that had money ready to go and wanted to pay the actual amount that they were asking for it. And what she said was, but I like you. And I want you to have it. And I'm like, look at the way God just rolled on in there and said, don't worry about it, honey. Like, you might not have money, but you have my favor. So moving forward from there.
Let me ask you this question, Nicole. What is the lesson in that meeting? What was the lesson for you in that meeting? And how has that forever changed how you look at what God has called you to do in the world?
That once God tells you yes, nobody can really say no. And you know how the verse, if God is for you, who can be against you, is true. Faith the size of a mustard seed is true. Like, that's unheard of. People are not going to just tell you, yes, I am renting out a property. Oh, you can't give me any money and you want me to lower my rent, but I have somebody else here ready. God's favor outweighs everything. And when he has a purpose for you, he is going to put together everything in line. Even if it's the president, he will line him up and say, okay, this is what I need for him to do for you. That's how I feel. I started to look at it like what we were doing in our vision was unstoppable. And people would laugh at me. And I'm like, no, I'm serious. I feel like because at this time, I think Barack Obama, right, was going into office. So I'm like, I can contact him. I believe he'll contact me back. But I believed it because I'm like, when it's all said and done, God is going to provide whatever you need. And nobody is too big. No mountain is too tall because he knocked down mountains for us to get into this school. Like, if I tried to explain everything in this podcast, it would last way too long. So I do plan to document it via book because I believe that we made history with faith, like I really do. The vision he gave us and the way that he provided for us is unbelievable. There's so many different things that happened along the way. And because of that moment in that meeting, I knew anything that came up against us, I'm like, oh, that's okay. And that's how I really looked at it. I'm like, it's fine because he's going to work it out, Just one quick example.
Yeah.
When it was time for us to sign the lease, the real estate agents have to be paid, right? It's the funniest story because I knew I needed to quit. We get in there, we meet with the real estate agents, and mind you, I already had the meeting, so I'm thinking, oh, it's fine. However, the real estate agents have to get paid. They have to get their, portion of what it is, the lease, etc. So they're like, okay, so it's time to get paid. So we need, they're writing stuff down. We need $4,000, right? And so mind you, I still don't have money. So I go, oh, okay. So today is Friday. And I'm like, pretend like I'm not lying. I'm like, oh, okay. So today's Friday. So the bank closes and I'm literally doing this out loud, right? And they go, and the woman, she goes, oh, it's fine. The landlord, she's like, oh, it's fine. Just bring it Monday. And in my mind, I said, okay, I got 3 days for the Lord to do something, and I know that he will. I went to church Saturday. I went into my pastor's office and I said, Pastor, can you pray with me? I need $4,000 by Monday. He goes, okay, baby girl, let's touch and agree. So we prayed about it. We touched and agreed. During the praise and worship, my pastor comes down, he stops and he says, I just want to let you know, like he says it, over the microphone, you're going to have what you need by tomorrow. You are going to have it because the Lord has spoken to him and he told me, do you know within the next 2 hours, I had over half of it? Somebody randomly turns around, hands me $800 cash. And I'm telling you the amounts because I want to let you know that doesn't normally happen. Who just hands out $800 to somebody and says, I didn't know what this was for, but now I do. And just gave it to me. Another person walks me outside. Hey, we're planning for our wedding and we have $1,500 that doesn't need to go anywhere. So we want to give that to you. I'm like, who, and then literally Sunday, I get a phone call. Hey, how much did you say you needed? I was like, well, I have this amount, so this is how much I need. Look, okay, I have it for you. Come and pick it up. So wow. I'm like, I'm like, oh, the Lord didn't came through, so I go to the bank and I'm excited about it, right? Because I'm thinking I get to put this deposit down but God did that in a matter of 2 days. He did exactly what needed to happen. And that is a lot of the story in which we have. When things were needed and necessary, somebody would always call me, no exaggeration. Hey, did you still need this? What? Yes. And they would give it to me. An architect. We needed an architect because, okay, let me go back because I'll go all over the place. Let me just line it back up. Okay, so the process is this. We found the venue. We had to go to the city. When we got to the city, we had to get a conditional use permit because that was not zoned to be a school, right? So we get in there and they tell me everything I need in the planning and development department so that we can actually, move forward. I get in there and they're like, okay, we need architectural plans that shows the building and what it is that you're going to do. Me being a genius, I decide I'm going to find some plans and I drew them out with like the ruler. I just said I have to, faith without works is dead, right? So I have to do my part to dive in here and do what it is I need to do. So I actually go in, I created plans and I brought them back and I'm like, here's the architectural plans. And I remember the lady looking at me and she laughs a little bit and she's like, okay, wait, I know you worked really hard on these, but I'll never forget that line. I use it with kids, like, how do you gonna tell me that? So she's like, I know you worked really hard on these, but we need an actual licensed architect to do this. So she slides them back to me and I start reaching out to people getting quotes, $30,000, $13,000, all this other stuff. So I find this online platform where apparently there's architects that work pro bono. And you just reach out, you put your information on there and, you just kind of go from there. I put my information on there to see if somebody would grab at it. Nobody did for months, actually. In the process of this, I have to apply with the state of California as well. So when I applied with the state of California, I had to submit the application for what I was trying to do, location, et cetera, et cetera. So like I said, it's a long process, which I do plan to, document it because of how things went. Long story short, within a month of each other, not only did I receive my 501c3 status, remember I had to apply with the IRS to be nonprofit. I received it. I also finally received my conditional use permit. All of it happened within a month of each other. And then the state finally called me to tell me that they were about to come out. So all this happened. At first, it seemed like forever, but all of this started happening. And I get a random phone call. I'm at Taco Bell, pulling through the line, and someone calls me, hey, are you still looking for an architect? I'm like, who is this? And they're like, we saw your work on such and such, and we would love to help you. And they did. So that $30,000 that we would have had to pay, we didn't have to pay it anymore. Somebody did the work actually pro bono, that whole portion of it. Like, right. So, God is like, don't worry about it. I'll just give that to me and then keep moving forward with what I have for you to do. And I'll take care of it when it's time. one lesson I learned with that is not going ahead of God, because I did at one point and I ended up in unnecessary debt, which was silly because every time I needed something, he provided it, but I got too anxious and I went ahead of him and I ended up, like I said, in unnecessary debt. So, in a nutshell, with our family actually was very helpful too and instrumental in what we were doing. They helped wherever they could. But yes, in the beginning, they did not understand what we were trying to do. And they're like, we support you, but what are you doing?
Right. And listen, that's critical because, for most of you all listening right now, either A, you are coming into your God-sized dream, or B, you already know what it is. And I guarantee you, there are going to be some people who love you to the moon and back, but won't have a clue what it is that you do. Right? They kind of give you that grandma phrase, baby, what you do again? Baby, what is that? Right?
We got that so much. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, you good. Look, listen. And that's something that you're going to have to develop some thick skin, because not everybody's going to understand what it is that you're doing. Because if you're on this podcast or you're watching, you are legendary. You are a pioneer, which means you're creating something in a format that may not exist in the way that that most people are used to. So that means that you got to get comfortable educating people on what it is that God has called you to do, because 9 times out of 10, it probably doesn't exist that way, right? It's different. The way either God has called you to start it, go about it, execute it, and who it's for, it's not going to make sense to normal people, right? But that's why you are a dream diver, right? You are doing something that most people aren't doing, they won't do, they can't do, because they don't have your story, they don't have your drive, they don't have your heart, they don't have your passion, they don't have your skills, and most importantly, they don't have your dream, period. Right? So what did you do to overcome the baby? What you doing? What you do to overcome that?
Right. So one of the biggest things that started with my strength, I did want to mention that I did not mention. My church has a women's retreat every year, and I finally attended it for the first time after not, being able to for whatever reason. And I specifically asked God, can you please restore within me the faith that I had as a child? Because when I was little, I believed God could do any and everything. Something along the way changed that, obviously, right? So I begged him, please restore that in me, because I'm tired of the back and forth, right? I can pray for people and I know they're good, but when it would come time for me to pray for myself, I would think it wasn't going to come together. So when it came time for us to open the preschool and people are like, I'm sorry, you want to do a preschool? Like, you sure you don't want to do a home daycare? And I know they did it out of love, not to discourage me, but I couldn't listen to it because God showed it to me. I'm grateful for that. The vision of those babies in those cribs, that actually stuck with me. It sticks with me now because I knew that the vision was clear. I say it all the time. God gave me a vision and I intend to follow it. And I mean it, because not only did he shake something in me when he showed it to me, it looked like I was watching a movie. So it's clearly set forth what he has for me to do. So I don't care who tells me that I shouldn't do it, that I should go a different route. I will not deviate from the path that God has set forth for me to go on. I don't care how hard it is. I don't care how I need it. So when they would tell me, oh, you sure you don't want to just do this instead? I would just tell them no. Or I wouldn't respond, to be honest with you. Thank you for your advice. I appreciate that. And I would go on about my way because I didn't see a need to argue with somebody about the vision God gave me. He didn't give it to you. So when you see what I'm doing, once it's open, then you'll understand what it is. And even if you don't, it's a vision he gave me because I am supposed to help X, Y, and Z. Like, these are the people I'm supposed to help. They're going to get the vision because I'm touching their lives. And from the outside looking in, it doesn't matter whether you understand it or not. What matters is that I do exactly what God asked for me to do.
Come on.
What scares me the most is making decisions that are not led by God. That scares me because I know that he knows the best. He knows what we're supposed to do. He knows the direction we're supposed to go in. He knows whose lives he wants us to touch. And I'm not going to let you send me left when I need to help 20 families that's over here to the right, because I want to listen to what you're telling me to appease what you feel is best for me. God created me. This is the vision he implanted in me before I was even born. So when it's time for me to move forward in that, that's what I am going to do. And I appreciate your love and your concern for me. And this might be difficult for you. I appreciate that. Pray for me because I'm going this direction that God led me to. Period. And that's honestly how I handled it. I stopped talking to certain people. I'm like, okay, they don't get it. So that ends that conversation. You know, because you love them, sometimes you accidentally allow them in deeper into your vision than they're supposed to be. So sometimes you might just have to end the conversation.
I hope y'all heard that. Nicole said sometimes you have to end the conversation that is not feeding the God-sized dream in you.
Yes.
Right? And some of us get so attached to the conversation that we will sacrifice the plan and the purpose and the God-sized dream on our lives because we want to stay connected with certain people. Here's the truth. The people you're so desperate to stay connected to, once they step into what's for them, they gone. They about to go do what they supposed to do, right? Meanwhile, you're entertaining a conversation that has no merit on what you're supposed to do. And sometimes you got to know the difference between dirt that you need to let fall off your shoulder and dirt that you're supposed to use to build on top of. And some of you are getting so comfortable with playing in the dirt instead of using the dirt to build on top of that is stopping you from creating miracles for other people, right? And so, Nicole, listen, I want to tell you how impactful today's conversation was for me and for everybody listening. Understanding that God will always provide, right? Yeah. And here's the thing I do with everybody that I interview is I wait to hear what the conversation talks about to come up with the episode title, right? And I tell them what that episode title is going to be. And this title for this podcast is going to be called God Will Always Provide.
Yes.
Because we see that pattern in your life. Once he told you that he put you on a mission to rescue and to help families who couldn't afford quality education, right? Okay. He provided at every critical moment along the path so that through you, miracles could begin to be released to these families who would probably be behind the power curve if it hadn't been for your perseverance, for your faith, right? And I get it. The word says all you need is a mustard-sized seed of faith. But I believe that DreamDivers operate with a maximum amount of faith in order to do what we're doing. Like you couldn't have walked in that office talking about a lease with no money with a seed side of faith, right? You know what I mean? So yeah. So listen, what's one piece of advice that you would give to all of the listeners out there who are either A, saying, okay, I'm going on all these job interviews. I know I ain't meant to work no job. I know I feel this push in my spirit. I know I'm supposed to do something that's going to change the world. What do you say to those people who are on that teeter-totter, like I need this six-figure income, but I also feel God calling me to do something great? What do you say to those people? What's your advice?
Okay, so my biggest advice is literally grab your faith. That's your parachute. And you need to dive straight into what God has called you to do. He doesn't let you just be comfortable when he needs you to do something. So if you find yourself being uncomfortable in whatever it is that you're doing and you feel like you're settling, that means that you need to go for what God is calling you to do because he trusts you to do it. That touched me so much to know that God trusts me enough to touch the lives of these different people. And if I don't do it, who's going to suffer because of it? You know, not just me and my family that's watching what I'm doing, but there's families, there's people out there that need you to do what God is calling you to do. It's not just, oh, so I can make money and this and that, because let's be clear. In the beginning of opening our school, we didn't make money, but it did not feel like we were not making money. I felt so fulfilled, and to this day, I feel fulfilled. And I know that God will always provide my needs whatever you want, you think you want some materials or whatever the case, he will provide what you need. Never forget that. He's not going to let you go and just, fall off the map and suffer and struggle and all these different things like that. He's going to provide for you. So try not to focus so much on what's comfortable and what's easy, and literally focus on the vision God gave you, because he will line you up where you're supposed to go. He will put people in your path that will help you along the way. He will remove whatever is not supposed to be there, and he will strengthen you when it gets difficult. He will bless you with the tools, the knowledge that you think that you could never have. He will give those things to you, but you do have to go for it. You have to walk in that dream, but stay connected to him. Please stay connected to him. Please seek him for counsel. Spend time with him, get to know him, because through that, it will not only strengthen you, you will get to know yourself, and I just know if I didn't do what, go for what it is that I am doing right now, there's so many kids who I have touched, who I've come in contact with that I never would have. And I can't imagine life that way. That's my biggest advice. Please go for it. Please. And whatever it is you're lacking, just ask him for help in it. Like, Lord, I don't know what to do here. Can you help me? Because if he gives you the vision, he's going to give you the provision. I know it sounds cheesy, but it's true.
True.
He's going to give you what you need. Why would he give you a vision and then not help you? That's not the type of God that we serve. So my advice, go for it.
Nicole Austin. Man, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I pray that all the DreamDivers listening were blessed, and they grabbed the root of what you were saying. That if God has called you to a thing, you can't part-time him, you can't half-time him. We serve a full-time God. And so if he's calling you to it, you got to go all in. And God will provide. He will make a way as you do what you have been called to do. Nicole, thank you so much. Where can everybody find you online to support you and all the great things that you're doing?
Oh, you can find me on Instagram at Nicole_Austin_. The preschool is at PA 4 kids. And then our website is www.purestacademyforkids.org.
Awesome. And for those of you who want to get in contact with Nicole or check out the preschool and the great things she's doing, I'll have all that info in the show notes. So all you got to do is click, and it'll take you right over there. Nicole, listen, what God is doing in your life is transforming your city, okay? I know you might not always see it or feel it, but you need to know that venue that God has given you, it is an incubator for miracles, right? You are raising up the next generation of miracle creators. You're raising up the next generation of lawyers and politicians and young men and women that are going to be great, that if they didn't have the foundation that you are providing, they potentially could be behind the learning curve. And so I want to encourage you and lift you up and help you understand that what you are doing is creating a wave, a shock wave in your city that families and children and the city will never forget the fact that you stepped into a role that most people wouldn't step into. Yeah. You are allowing people to access things that people are putting a price tag on and locking certain types of people out of. And you are literally unlocking that for demographics of people, man. So from all of us here at DreamDivers Nation, myself included, thank you for what you're doing because it matters. I've seen it with my own two eyes.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, it matters. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for watching this podcast. I hope it inspired you. Now, I need a huge favor. I need you, no matter what platform you're on, I need you to find that subscribe button, that like button. Leave us a great rating and a positive review. All of your comments, all of your reviews help us continue to make great content just for you.